Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, the show where we discuss every book in the history of Dragonlance one at a time, one chapter at a time, one page at a time, one character at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Putt, and with me, as always, my dear friend John. Hey, John.
How's it going, folks? Today, we are starting at Chapter 5 of Dragons of Winter Night. The Riot, Taz Disappears, Ohana Starbreeze.
I'm super excited. This is a really big deal chapter, actually. A whole lot happens here because we learn a lot about the characterization of, for instance, Raistlin. What's his deal? What's the deal with the relationship between Tika and Caramon? And the party begins to sever itself. But the first thing, though, is just a good time old party. The chapter starts with rock being thrown at Sturm as the Sturm, Gilthanas, Tanis, Flint, and Taz are walking through and being marched by the guards to the, City Hall or something like that.
Yeah, they call it the Hall of Justice, I believe. And to catch people up from last episode, it ended with the companions getting to Tarsus, being found out by the guards of having, no one would have cared really, except someone saw that Sturm was a Knight of Solamnia, and they rounded him up, and half the party stayed upstairs at the inn, while the other half of the party, specifically Tanis, Sturm, Gilthanas, Flint, and Taz, are being marched through the city by the crowds, and that's where the chapter starts, with a rock hitting Sturm in the head. We learn a little bit about some gameplay stuff here in D&D and Kender's special abilities, don't we?
Oh, yeah. So basically, you've got this crowd of heroes being dragged through town. The book says it best, actually. Besides being quite casual in respect to other people's properties, Kender have another unendearing characteristic known as the taunt. All Kender possesses talent to a greater or lesser degree. It's how their diminutive race has managed to thrive and survive in a world full of knights and warriors, trolls, and hobgoblins. The taunt is the ability to insult an enemy and work him into such a fever pitch of rage that he loses his head and begins fighting wildly and erratically. Taz was a master of the taunt, though he rarely found need to use it while traveling with his warrior friends.
Taz decided to take full advantage of this opportunity. He began to shout insults back.
Kabam. Basically, so if we remember our D&D lore, Kender were Hickman's take on halflings. He didn't like the fact that halflings were very just much hobbits with a different name, and that they were like super thievish and kind of had this whole they had a very stereotypical vibe to them in old D&D, and he wanted his halflings to be different. So he made the Kender, and the Kender, of course, as we've learned, are really good at pickpocketing, but they take things out of innocence and out of curiosity and, I guess, ADHD, and less out of deep desire to be greedy and steal. But, of course, he couldn't get away from the whole rogue thing anyways. But the taunt, the Kender taunt, is like one of the most unique kind of abilities, because what it does, and this became kind of a template for a lot of video games later on, was this whole idea of, as we call it these days in modern parlance, drawing aggro, which is to say, the Kender yells and screams and makes a big fuss and insults them until these guys just cannot handle it, and they've got to go and target all their attacks at them and focus on the Kender so the other people can handle this business. It started out because the person playing the Kender in the first game was just really good at making like a whole kind of notion of, how do I laugh and poke fun at these people in really goofy kinds of way? And it has basically stuck. It's become one of like the most iconic things. In like one of the 5th edition versions, they were like, the Kender taunt is a magical ability. And everybody's like, no, it's not. It's a supernatural. No, it's not a supernatural. It's just an innate ability for these guys to find the thing that irritates the most. If you ever played the game Star Control 2, there's a race called the Pakunk in there, which are basically big like toucans, like hippie toucans, and they're effectively like the Kender because their special ability is also just taunting and just grabbing the enemy and dragging them up and yelling like insults like dweeb and all that sort of thing. This Kender ability kind of just became a big mainstay in a lot of like different contexts.
So he starts yelling insults, and he's much better at it than the crowd is. And before Tanis realizes it and can stop it, it's already gone too far. It says the crowd is near rioting. The guards are unable to do anything. And then right in the midst of it, Taz is picked up, muffled, and a sack is thrown over him. By the time Tanis can see again, he was hit by a tomato and blinded. Everyone's okay. The crowd has calmed down because Taz is gone. And Flint's really upset, so he starts yelling and screaming, like, "Where's Taz? Where's Taz? Where's Taz?" And Tanis tells him to shut up because he thinks Taz has escaped, right? He thinks Taz used the opportunity to, slip undetected.
Mm-hmm.
So they make it to the Hall of Justice, and it's only then that the guards realize that Taz is gone. And he's like, he wasn't important. Who cares? We got the important people. Once again, people underestimate the Kender and their ability to do and ruin everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's this really interesting kind of notion in Dragonlance of basically anti-Kender racism, almost, where these guys are just like, everybody just treats these people as like vermin or like sort of just like a problem that is just in cities. Like, oh, the pigeon pooped on my, drying clothes again. The Kender were underfoot. It's like,
it's not quite vermin. I would say that's how they treat gully dwarves.
Yeah, they treat gully dwarves like vermin.
It's more like these are annoying teenagers. So we don't actually try to hurt them or like mess with them. We just don't like them, but we don't actually think they can do anything, which is why he's like, who cares? The Kender can't do anything. And, you'd think after generations of Kenders doing things, people would learn, but apparently they don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. Kender have been around for literal thousands of years. And it's funny because, like, you hear, like, there's this recurring notion in Dragonlance of, like, oh, yeah, all the Kender, like, whenever Kenders meet up, they're talking about the various jails they've been in various different cities. And they're like, oh, yeah, the jail in Palanthas offers us food 3 times a day. It's pretty great, whatever. And it's like, that's just kind of, but they're so happy-go-lucky about it that they kind of just, whatever, it's a vacation for them. It's just kind of like, they don't care because they can get out anytime they want.
Yeah, it's basically like, oh, this is fun. And when I'm not having fun, I'll just pickpocket the keys and I'll leave, or I'll pick the lock and I'll leave.
Yeah, when this is no longer interesting to me, I'll just have a nice day and be on my way. And it's like, and that's why people just kind of treat them as like kudzu, dandelions growing in your lawn. It's just like, well, they're just going to be here.
It's annoying, but I can't really do anything about it.
What are you going to do? They're just dandelions. They show up. Also, we have one of the first instances of Tinker Gnomes showing up here. Because when the constable goes into the Hall of Justice there's a Tinker laying in the corner, snoring, obviously having had too much wine. Now, it could have been like, ye old Tinker, like just any random like dude who goes around ignorantly and fixing things. But in Dragonlance, Tinker means Tinker Gnome.
Did it mean it at this time?
It did.
Okay.
It's kind of always been in Dragonlance a notion that calling something a Tinker is referring to a gnome. But, like, they don't make big fuss of it, and it's just a sentence of, like, flavor text, but it's pretty neat to remember. The Lords of the Tarsus bring them in. They're sitting there, like, Sturm's like, yeah, these guys will be fine. They're honorable. He's a lord. They're great. They have a reputation for being good people. We haven't done anything. It'll be fine, right?
Yeah, that's his thing. It's like, what charges could there be? And I was like, oh, you're so naive, Sturm. Not.
And it's just like, bro, if they want to throw you in jail, they can make up any kind of charge they want, and you don't get a say because that's medieval justice for you. I don't like the shadow you're casting. It's like, yeah. What? That's not a charge. Yeah, well, tell that to the judge.
The hope lasts as long as it takes them to notice that the Lord of Tarsus is being advised by someone in a cloak, all covered up, and is a draconian.
Yeah. I feel like this one's not going to end well for somebody. But yeah, we have definitely seen the long robe, fully covered dudes before.
Yeah.
Flint is like, huh. And Tanis like, oh, God damn it.
And right from there, we cut right back to the inn. The companions are waiting. There's a conversation between Tika and Caramon. Their little bond continues to grow.
This is one of the ones where, like, they're kind of, the prudishness of our authors comes into play yet again. Because these guys are like, Caramon's face was animated and relaxed as he talked to the young woman. They did not touch, not with the golden eyes of Caramon's twin on them, but they leaned very near to each other because they have to act like, high schoolers in Greece or something, because old man Raceland is sitting there just glowering at them the whole time, acting like a fuddy-duddy chaperone.
Yeah. And so Caramon is just like talking and going through, and everything he says is just fascinating to Tika.
Yeah.
So Tika listened intently, her eyes gleaming with admiration.
Oh my god.
We do learn that she's did a lot more fighting during the journey south and for the hunt of the hammer. But she's no good with a sword. She's developed her own fighting style. She's a shield basher.
She is very famous, iconically, for slamming people in the head with a frying pan. And having had a cast iron frying pan, that would probably kill a dude, you know? And basically becoming a shield basher is also later on became one of those other kind of iconic ideas of like the defender comes out and just thwacks you with the shield. And even in like a Diablo type game stuff, you could definitely have like shield style attacks. And honestly, it just kind of, I always liked that about her. Dragonlance has like Lorana, she's a trained knight, right? And it has Kitiara, she's a trained knight. And it has Tika. She slams people in the head with improvised weapons and tries not to die. And I'm like, you know what? Every party needs one of those.
And it turns out she's pretty effective at it.
She's very, very good at some. Well, I mean, that's her training as a barmaid, right? Like touchy feely guys need to be let known that this is not going to fly here.
But this section is the important part. Is Lorana decides that she's going to try and have a conversation with Raistlin.
Yeah.
So he's trying to learn new spells. We learn that he has gained some new spells. It says that they're taught to him by Fizban, and then also from the book that he gained in Zaxxaroth.
Yeah. What we're learning here is basically...
He's leveled up, right?
Yeah, exactly. He leveled up. There's a couple of things here. One is that the book here lays out what wizards in Krynn have to do, and in all of D&D, which is you have to read spells, memorize them, cast them, and then rememorize them. It's the Jack Vance magic, once again, that we call the Vancian magic, fire and forget. In leveling up, he's learned some spells from Fistendantilus. He's learned some spells from Fizban, which is how he's a red mage. He's a red mage because he's the neutral mage, so he can learn spells from a Paragon of Good White Robe and from these Nightbound books of evil from the Black Robe.
Got it.
He's never going to be as good at the White Robe or the Black Robe magic at their specific schools of magic, but he's got access to them at lower levels. And like, obviously we've seen Fizban use things like Featherfall and I mean, God knows what other kind of like
that huge fireball.
Yeah. And then like from Fizban, from Fizzy, he learned other spells like lightning bolt and things like that. But he's basically learning more than just charm and sleep, which is, and light, I guess.
The reason she really wants to talk to him is in chapter 4, when they were splitting up, he said it'd be a long farewell, and that's also when he told like Sturb, oh, some of us will never see each other again. Lorana, that's why she wants to talk to him, because she's trying to figure out like, what did you mean by a long farewell? And so she asks about his eyes and what's going on.
Oh, I love this way this conversation starts. She's like, what do you see when you look far away like that? She asked softly, sitting down next to him, feeling a sudden weakness of fear sweep over her. What do I see? He repeated softly. There was great pain and sadness in his voice, not the bitterness she was accustomed to hearing. I see time as it affects all things. Human flesh withers and dies before it dies. Flowers bloom only to fade. Trees drop green leaves never to regain them. In my sight, it is always winter, always night. I love that. I love the way he describes that. Like, he's got these hourglass eyes, which basically were drawn again because Larry Elmore thought they looked cool, and he was right. They look absolutely sick. But they're like, okay, well, what did this do? What does it mean to have hourglass eyes? The kind of description they give and the floweriness of it sounds really cool in practice of like, oh yeah, man, he sees time as it's going and withering and stuff. If you think about it for too long, though, it kind of falls apart. Like, what does it mean to see things just dissolving? Does that mean he can't open doors because the door handle's falling off into sight? Like, does it only affect inanimate objects, or animate objects? Is it only for organic or inorganic things? Like, how does he see it? What does his food look like?
For things like trees and stuff, it's like, but, you know, trees live for hundreds and hundreds of years. Does he see them bloom and then like leaves grow and fall, leaves and fall, leaves and fall, and then it falls apart? Like, what's the scale of this? What's the speed? Don't think about it too much. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. It never really impacts anything. And keep trying to get Margaret to actually put something in a book somewhere where it's like, he gets actually screwed by his eyes just being like, oh man, flesh is turning to mush again. God damn it. It's like he bites into a burger and it just dissolves into maggots or whatever. But no, it doesn't. It's more of just every now and again when they need to remind you that Raceland's got weird things about him, he sees people dying.
And she says, oh, this happened to you in the High Tower.
The Tower's a high sorcery.
She says, why? To what end? And he says, it was done by the head of the mages to teach me compassion. He's like, I was arrogant. I was the youngest to ever take the test. And, I thought I could do. And then he hints at dark things he did during the tests.
Yeah, he's like, they shattered my body and devoured my mind until the end I was capable of, and he stops. What was he capable of, huh?
Oh, and it says, of what? Laurana asked, fearing to know, yet fascinated. Nothing, Raceland whispered, lowering his eyes. I am forbidden to speak of it. She's like, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to give you pain. We're reminded here that even though Raceland just went through telling us that he sees nothing, it's always winter and he sees nothing but death. When he looks at Laurana, he does not see that. Time has not touched her.
Yeah, this is a great sentence too. Raceland leaned forward almost unconsciously, his hand stretching out and trembling to touch the wondrous hair that seemed possessed of a life of its own. So vibrant and luxuriant was it. Then, seeing before his eyes his own dying flesh, he withdrew his hand quickly and sank back into the chair, a bitter smile on his lips. For what Laurana could not know, was that in looking at her, Raceland saw the only beauty he would ever see in his lifetime. Young by elven standards, she was untouched by death or decay, even in the mage's cursed vision. Elves live for like 1,000 years, so like a young elven woman is basically as close to immortal as it gets in Raceland's eyes. Now, they obviously wrote this before they knew more about who Raceland was and stuff. He definitely has seen other unaging immortal things in like places, and he does later, but it's more of a symbolic idea here that we're deep in the heart of winter. Everything he's seeing, including himself, is just falling to pieces, except for this one paragon.
The one time it's spring and summer for him is Laurana in this moment and when this book was written.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's a really cool, very poignant feeling idea.
She asks about what he said, right? This is what she wanted to know. Like, what did you mean about the split? Like, did you see the future? And even though they put all this emphasis in the last chapter on his last words, he just says here, I don't know. Kind of just came out. It's like I kind of made it up.
It's like the half elf comes to me for advice, not because I can see the future. I can't. I'm no seer. But what did you say? It's like,
She's like, but what you said, some of us may not see each other again. She's like, well, you must have foreseen something. What? I must know. Was it Tanis? Raceland pondered. When he spoke, it was more to himself than Laurana. I don't know, he whispered. I don't even know why I said that. It's just that, for an instant, I knew. He seemed to struggle to remember, then suddenly shrugged. Knew what? Laurana persisted. Nothing. My overwrought imagination, as the knight would say if he were here. And then he changes the subject. It's like, I don't want to talk about it. This is where we learn about Kitiara, the other thing Laurana desperately wants to know about.
Right? She's like fiending for information over here. And we learn about Race's family, or at least the first instance of what the Magirs were like. His mom, who's got like this weird prescient future seeing ability, and she's fragile and has bad health and falls into weird trances that she can't wake up from. Then her dad, Kit's dad, was like a mercenary sellsword, a really handsome dude from the knighthood who came and swept her away, left her with the baby, and then left. Race's mom marries his dad, a dude who's just a generic woodcutter, a hardy, farmer type.
Oh, they hinted a thing here. I wanted to ask. When he's talking about Kitiara's father, he says, though he was clearly of noble blood, he never spoke of his family. I do not believe he even told her his real name. And Raceland's eyes narrowed. He told Kitiara, though, I'm sure of it. That is why she traveled north, to find his family. Do we learn about that in never in the main series? I'm guessing that's later books that were written about Kitiara, where we learn who her father was and if she's a noble or something.
Oh yeah, we know his her father was named Gregor Uthmader, and we know this because Kit talks about it later on, but also because they wrote one of my favorite non-canon Dragonlance stories about it, which was the one where Sturm and Kit go to the moon. I can't. It's by Paul Thompson and Tanya B. Carter. I cannot remember. Darkness and Light. Darkness and Light. I know because like my copy has been read so many times, the title has been worn off the side. But yeah, in Darkness and Light, they talk about that. But they also in the Soul Forge and in Brothers in Arms. Well, more Brothers in Arms than Soul Forge. We learn about what Kit does when she goes north by herself with Sturm and friends. That's also how she gets pregnant and has Steel later on, but that's a different story. We know who Kit's dad is.
Okay.
Kit, her dad didn't tell her mom, like Raceland's mother. I mean, kind of did, but it's just like that's less about like the knowledge of it and more that he was just a shady kind of fly by night character, anyways. He was just kind of like a drifter and any port in the storm type of guy.
Got it.
So it's less about like, oh, you know, she didn't know. It's more like just trying to explain the type of dude this dude was.
We learn here that even though Lorana's learning a lot, and we're the reader's learning a lot, the whole reason Raceland's opened up is because he is trying to learn about Lorana. He needs to know what makes her tick so that he can push her buttons and know her weaknesses when he finds it advantageous to.
Well, I mean,
so that's the whole reason this is happening.
There's a back and forth of all of this. I mean, you know, Race is always going to be looking for the advantage, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Raceland believes everything is a competition. And so he's got to win it as opposed to just being a friend and gaining some like he doesn't believe in that. Everything's got to be some sort of transactional for him.
Yeah, but it is funny though to think about the fact that he's like, all right, fine. If you want Tanis, then I'm gonna go for Tanis. That would have been a funny fanfic. It was like if Raceland suddenly starts flirting with Tanis just to mess with Lorana.
And we learned about the early version of the companions when it was just the twins, Kit, Tanis, and Sturm traveling around with Flint before he retired.
Yeah. Flint was a wood carver and a toy maker and general artisan. And he went around the Abnasinia area and went to Qualinost and went to, Thorbarden. And these guys would just kind of tag along with him and learn how to fight and learn how to adventure and do all those things.
And then I guess it was after they'd been doing this for like 5 or so years, it was Tanis is the one who was like, oh, we should probably split up. And in the first book, it's explained is that they split up to go if they could find the old gods. That was the reason, but they don't mention that really here.
Well, there were numerous reasons that they split up. I mean, there's a whole series called the Meeting Sextet about that and the Preludes series and all this. But really, the key here is that actually one of the things that's important before we get that far is that like we learn a lot about Kit's nature of raising Raceland and like raising Raceland and Caramon and basically instilling them with this kind of like never say die kind of attitude, which really manifests itself in Caramon and Raceland in different ways. Like Caramon's like just completely... He's always going to be running forward. He's always fighting. He's always ready to do this. But Raceland is just tenacious to they both share this kind of innate tenacity and refusal. And that comes from Kitiara, where she was basically like, she had to handle working. Like, I think this is one of my favorite bits here, which is like, Raceland's mom is pregnant with twins, is giving birth. She gets one healthy baby. And the second one is like fighting for life. The midwife has given him up for dead. And Kitiara is there. And she says, her first battle was against death with me as the prize. And I'm like, I love that image of Kit is 8 years old. And she's like, no, you're not taking my brother. I'm going to. And you get this feeling that there is this real deep familial bond there, even though she ends up being very selfish and very just driven for her own needs. And you learn a lot more about her in Brothers in Arms and other books later, where she's like in a world where she's disadvantaged from multiple tiers and she finds a way to carve her own path to power and independence. And it's really, really kind of just amazing to watch, even though she brings her own downfall about her. It's not because of like her lack of tenacity or anything. She's...
Oh my God. I just remembered what happened to her.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a bad news.
I just remembered. If you know, you know. For those who don't, wow.
For those who don't, really, are you listening to this show?
Hey, there are people who are new readers to this listening.
Yeah, and much love to my friend Sarah. I know that you and your partner listen. It's a really great to have seen you guys and hear about that. So, Race and Kit and Caramon are raised together. We jump forward, and they're all adventuring and going off.
We get back to Tanis, because Rayson states, oh, even then, Tanis was the leader. He has the skills for it. especially that he's like, Sturm always thinks with his head, but Tanis thinks with his heart at times, and that's what you need. And then she's like, well, what about you? Why do you follow Tanis? And he's like, wait a second. I do not follow Tanis. We just happen to be going in the same direction.
I love that line so much. It is like, because like I love this. Like Raceland is sitting there, he's going through the whole list of everything, and Laurent's like, "You left yourself out. If you're as intelligent, why are you following?" No, sister.
Yeah.
I'm here because I know he's going to take me to what I need to get to.
I notice you leave out yourself. If you are as intelligent and powerful as you claim, why do you follow Tanis? Raceland's hourglass eyes were dark and hooded. He stopped talking as Caramon brought his twin a cup and carefully poured water from the kettle. The warrior glanced at Laurana, his face dark, embarrassed and uncomfortable as always whenever his brother went on like this. Raceland did not seem to notice. Pulling a pouch from his pack, he sprinkled some green leaves into the hot water. A pungent, acrid smell filled the room. I do not follow him. The young mage looked up at Laurana. For the time being, Tanis and I simply happen to be traveling in the same direction.
Get bent, lady.
I think Raceland's lying to himself a little here.
Oh, he is 100%. He wants to believe that he is so much stronger than he is.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm independent and cool. We just happen to be hanging out together. That's all. Like, bro, these are your family. But he's too proud to realize that and to own that. And that's like, again, another one of his that's a hubris of Raceland right there. He thinks he can do this on his own. That's what led to the test. That's what led to him trying to like blast Caramon out of existence during the test. That's what leads to him, like, taking Fitz and Dantless' power. All of these decisions he makes is because he believes that he is the best and most brightest and most intelligent person in the world, and everybody else is just there to be his palanquin carriers.
He keeps thinking that if he just has one more bit of power, he won't need these people. Throughout the entire arc of Raceland, and then you realize that he realizes, I think eventually that's not the case. He will always need more people because that's what people are. People need people. But he just keeps thinking that if he just has one more thing, he won't need anyone.
That is the growth arc of Raceland, right? Like, he sits there and he's like, yo, you know what? He learns eventually, like, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. A long way to go. Yeah, meanwhile, we flip over back into the view of the Hall of Justice where Tanis and friends are hanging out with this new Lord of Tarsus here. And he's like, those Knights of Solamnia are not welcome in our city, nor elves, kender, dwarves, or those who been traveling in their company. I understand you also have a magic user, one who wears the red robes. You wear armor. Your weapons are bloodstained and come quickly and readily to your hand. Obviously, you are skilled warriors. And this guy is like, that is enough for me to throw you into jail forever. And the constable's like, obviously they're mercenaries. And Sturm's like, hell no, we're not mercenaries. We've got refugees with us, and we're fleeing from the Dragon Lord, and this and that and the other thing. We came here to get ships, but it's landlocked. And the Lord's like, you came from the north. You can't come from the north. The north is blocked by dwarves, and ain't no one going there. And he's like, well, if you know anything about knights, you know that we don't lie. And he's like,
this is wild to me because he just straight up tells them about the Hammer Quest. He just says, I'm just thinking there's a Draconian right there. And I have to imagine that you probably don't want the people who talk to the bad goddess to know that you have the magic MacGuffin that can make the magic MacGuffin that can kill your dragons. And they just blurt it out right here. He's like, well, yeah, Thorbarden was closed, but we went on a hammer quest, and because we got the hammer, they opened it again so we could bring the refugees through. He just doesn't believe him. Like, even though the Lord's like, okay, well, you might believe that's what happened, but I'm not going to believe you.
Yeah, like...
And then they're interrupted.
It's funny, though, because it's like Sturm is such a lawful good stick in the mud that even in a place where he knows he should not be opening his goddamn mouth and telling the truth, he's going to dump on them anyways because his honor will not allow him to do otherwise. And it's like, when you meet the actual knights who are just doing knightly things and are like just normal knights, you're like, oh, these people are just normal people who just happen to have this job. Sturm is just a friggin' weirdo.
This is why I refuse to play with lawful good characters.
Well, he's just so devout, not devout, but he's so devoted to this idea of the purity of the knighthood.
He's a zealot.
He's a zealot because that's how he was raised. He was raised by zealots, and he was raised in a place where he's like, we have fallen, we have come far from, paradise, and all we have left is this identity. His mother has given him this code to live by, and he's like, well, if without this, I'm nothing. And it's just such a anchor around his neck all the time.
Yeah, so they're interrupted by they're talking by guards dragging in another prisoner. It's a woman. She falls. Sturm runs to her. He's being that paragon. She speaks, and as soon as she speaks, Tanis and Gilthanas are stunned because she's a Sylvanesti elf.
Yeah, and the thing is, all she says is, Sturm goes there and is like, my lady, allow me to assist you, etc. All she says is, you had better leave me, Sir Knight. Her voice is barely audible behind the veil that she's wearing, but literally the accent that she uses is enough to make Tanis, who are both raised in the court of Qualinest, at the heart of Elven country, they know instantaneously.
Have they ever talked to a Sylvanesti elf, or do they just know?
Oh, yeah. No, they would.
Oh, so there is communication back and forth between the two.
Remember, the elves are very, magically inclined, and they have a lot of communication and stuff like that. And the Sylvanesti and Qualinesti don't like each other, but they would have
communicated.
At least had envoys and something like that between each other, because you learn about the other elves, and I'm sure even in just their classes of nobility and learning, they've been like, we're teaching you how to speak Elven. Now we're going to teach you how to speak Sylvanesti Elven, because it's like, oh, we're going to teach you Church Latin, They know immediately because elves speak in a certain way.
Yeah.
And these two are elves, but they're like, oh, that's an elf that's speaking in a more pure way than we do. Huh.
She has a lisp, just like the Spain.
Yeah, it's like Spain Spanish versus Mexican Spanish, right?
The Lord of Tarsus tells the elf that she was told to leave the city. He gave her a chance the first time, but he won't now. And she's accused of trying to hire mercenaries. That's why she's like, you were not supposed to be here. We told you.
All right. Well, I will correct myself, though, because I do look at Gilthanas whispers to Tanis, like, she's Sylvanesti Elven. Does Sturm know? And Tanis like, of course not. How could he? I barely recognize her accent myself.
Yeah.
He knows enough to know that she is an elf, but they don't have enough contact to be able to.
He might have heard once or twice in his life a Sylvanesti elf.
Sure.
But so if you only hear it once or twice, how are you going to catch it, right?
Right. But it's enough to know, you would still know, the existence thereof and to be able to figure it out. Because there's certain ways when a North Indian and a South Indian meet, our languages are fundamentally different. And when we're speaking in English, though, and they have a heavy accent, you can tell the difference between a North and South because of the way we enunciate our vowels or the way we say certain consonants or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You might not be able to place exactly where they're from, but you would know, oh, this is an Indian who is speaking with an accent that is not like mine. I can generally place where they're from. Similarly, they would be able to hear that and be like, oh, that's an elf. I know that's an elf.
It's a way I can place someone from Australia speaking English, or someone from Ireland speaking English, or someone from Scotland,
Exactly.
Or the way some people tell me that they can tell I'm from California.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be from the West Coast, the way you talk.
Yeah, because we have a very there's a very California accent that we've got, because of our exposure to a lot of Spanish-speaking language and a lot of our vowels change. Anyways, that's a different podcast.
We learn her name because the Lord says, Lady Alhana, you were warned to leave. As soon as we hear the name, Gilthanas goes, she must be the princess of the Sylvanesti elves. Apparently, there's only one elf named Alhana. Well, I guess because she was here on a diplomatic mission, so that would make sense.
To Alderaan. Every time I read the word diplomatic mission, I can only hear Princess Leia in the beginning of Star Wars.
And so he's like, oh, it must be the princess of the Sylvanesti elves. We get a little background here, and Shivam has shared this before on the podcast about the Kinslayer Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And how the Sylvanesti and the Qualinesti were separated.
Gilthanas is like, dude, you cannot have been gone for so long that you forget who our cousins are.
Well, and it says here, the elven leaders still kept in contact in the mysterious manner of the elf lords, who it is said can read messages in the wind and speak the language of the silver moon.
Which is to say that they use magical telepathy and notes.
And now he remembered Alhana, of all elf maidens reputed to be the most beautiful and distant as the silver moon that shone on her birth.
Yeah. So here we have the contrast to Lorana, who is the golden general, right? Her hair is blonde and beautiful, and she's, meant to be this just earthy wood elf.
Lorana is warm and friendly, and this is not the first time that Alhana will be portrayed as being distant and cold.
The ice princess.
Yeah, cold as the moon and distant as the stars.
Well, I mean, you also get that vibe from just the Qualinesi and Sylvanesi themselves. The Qualinesi is the speaker of the suns. The Sylvanesi is the speaker of the moons, right? Like there's a whole different kind of, well, the speaker of the stars. It's like the moons are the Darganesi, and don't worry about it. But the point is, they're like, and when you look at the cover of Brahms' art for the Elven Nation trilogy, you see that the Qualina, like Kithkanon, is shown as being warm and having skin tone and flesh and everything. Sithas, becomes the father of the Sylvanesi people, is like just an ice pillar of marble. He's just super, super cold. And you're like, oh, these guys are twins. What happened?
They're fraternal twins, obviously.
Yes.
The Draconian tells the Lord what to do, and Alhana's arrested. Sturm does not like this, and there's about to be a fight. The Lord of Tarsus, he's like, okay, if you're so concerned, you guys are going to jail anyway. So Sturm and companions, you can accompany Alhana to prison to make sure she's treated well. And she falls again when they're picking up.
I love Tannis' response. Truly, as Sturm says, this lord comes from a noble and honorable line.
And Sturm finds it's a pin. I believe it's the artwork for the cover of this chapter.
It is.
It's this item.
The star jewel.
Yeah, and it's covered in diamonds. It's shaped like a star. As he's picking it up, he sees Alhana's face for the first time as she removes a veil. He falls instantly in love.
Well, yeah, because she's literally the hottest person on the planet.
Well, yeah, so he falls in love. He hides the pin. He goes to escort her. And then when Tannis sees his face, he realizes, he's like, bleep. He knows exactly what's happened because this is Tannis's life, right?
Yeah.
He also fell in love with an elf maiden he wasn't supposed to fall in love with. And he knows that it will cause what all the pain is going to cause. We learn that the Kinslayer War was fought over this very reason, to keep the elves' blood pure.
Mm-hmm.
So like real eugenicists over here, apparently.
Well, basically, the Kinslayer War is fought because originally the elves owned this entire giant area between Sylvanesi, Qualinesi, and the plains in between the Carlis Plains. And there were a lot of humans and people living out in those plains areas, and the elves kind of colonized the two different woody areas there. In the far reaches of Qualinesi, or well, what became Qualinesi later, there was starting to be a lot of intermingling between the elves and the local indigenous tribes and the Urgothian people. And you were starting to get and like the dwarves and everything, you're starting to get a lot of interbreeding and mixing and kind of miscegenation over there. And the elves of Sylvanesti are like, I beg the hell your pardon. That's not what we do. We are the children of Paladine. We are pure blood firstborn, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And the elves over out in the frontier are like, yo, we're over here living our lives like real people with real people and dealing with ourselves. Tough. And the Urgothians are coming to invade. The Sylvanesi elves are like, screw this, we're going to go and destroy them. And they're like, bastard half-blood children or whatever. And that's kind of where this split happens. Kithkanon falls in love with a human who is the daughter of the Urgothian emperor. And then, he's over there, he's making friends with dwarves and stuff. And the elves start fighting amongst each other. And then Sithas and Kithkanon are like, okay, you get that half, I get this half, and we'll never talk to each other again. Bye. But it's really just seriously like one of my favorite stories of all time. Kithkanon's son Selvarin Greenhands, one of the coolest characters in Dragonlance. That's why I self-inserted myself into the second book of the new Dragonlance book series as the son of Selvarin, because that's what I wanted to do when I was 12.
There's a nice line here at the end of the chapter. It says, Tannis had seen Alhana's face and felt his own heart stir with her beauty. But he had seen Sturm's face as well. He had seen that beauty enter the knight's heart, doing more damage than a goblin's poisoned arrow tip. For this love must turn to poison, he knew. The Sylvanesti were a proud and haughty race. Fearing contamination and the loss of their way of life, they refused to have even the slightest contact with humans. Thus the Kinslayer Wars have been fought.
Yeah.
No, thought Tannis sadly, the silver moon itself was not higher or farther out of Sturm's reach, the half-elf side. This was all they needed. Well, and that's a funny line you say here, right? The silver moon itself was not higher or farther out of Sturm's reach.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me in another book, Sturm goes to the moon. So,
Well, he goes to Lunitari, the red moon.
oh, okay. Yeah. Anyone can get to the red moon, but the silver moon, that's ridiculous.
Well, they take a gnome ship. It's fine. Everything's fine. Dude, seriously, it's a wonderful story. It's not
No, I'm sure it is.
It's not the most canonical story, but it's a great
I just thought it was funny that
yeah.
There's a story where Sturm goes to the moon, and there's a line in a book that says, nothing so far out of the way as the moon, as this woman. And it's like, well, if anyone could do it, it could be Sturm who went to the moon.
Alana's description, though, is really rad, right? Muralasa, the elves called her Princess of the Night. Her hair was black and as soft as the night wind, held in place by a net as fine as cobweb, twinkling with jewels like stars. Her skin was the pale hue of the silver moon. Her eyes the deep, dark purple of the night sky, and her lips the color of the red moon shadow. So she's got purple eyes and like alabaster skin. That's like incredibly cool.
She sounds, well, no, I guess that's not true, because drow have black colored skin, with purple.
Yeah.
They don't have white colored skin.
Yeah, no, this is like high elf. When you contrast that with Lorana's introduction in the first book, the difference between the Sylvan Esty and the Qualan Esty. Because to go back to Autumn Twilight for a second, let's see, the Elf Maiden, no hint of decay touched the young Elf Maiden in Raceland Ties. Her hair was honey pouring out of a pitcher. It spilled over her arms and down her back, past her waist, touching her wrist as she stood with her arms at her side. Her skin was smooth and woodland brown. She had the delicate, refined features of the elves, but these were combined with full pouting lips and large liquid eyes that changed colors like leaves in the flickering sunshine. So she's got blonde hair, green eyes, and kind of like wood brown skin. Meanwhile, Alana's got like pale alabaster skin, purple eyes, and is very much the high elf of tradition.
Yep. And that's how the chapter ends, with Sturm in love, and they're all going off to prison. Chapter 6 starts, and it's called Knights of Solamnia, Tasselhoff's Glasses of True Seeing.
Ah, yes. This is so cool. There's a short story about these Glasses of True Seeing where Dalamar has them, and it's just a really, really great story talking about... In the olden days, a lot of these short stories were basically people would just take a line from Chronicles or something and write a whole story about that and spin it off into like, what could this have been? It was really cool. Like there's one about Tasselhoff's dagger being this weird animate dragon dagger that just got like, its own sentient life of its own. Like it's a weird one. The story of Dalamar getting these Glasses of True Seeing and going off and learning to read scrolls and stuff is just super cool.
So the chapter opens. There are two figures, and they're watching as Tanis and Sturm and Gilthanas and Flint are being escorted from the Hall of Justice. They seem excited. These two figures are also completely covered in cloth. That should tell you who they are. And they say, we have to report to the High Lord at once. And they're like, well, shouldn't we follow him first? What if they try to escape? And the other one says, we know where they're going to go if they escape. They're going to go back to the inn. And also, it's not going to matter soon anyway. I wonder why. What could be happening? And as the constables lead the prisoners through back streets this time, right? They're going to avoid crowds. Even though they learned from the first time, even though Taz isn't here, they're not going to be running them down Main Street.
Let's not push our luck here.
Yeah, they're ambushed by 3 people. They're quickly neutralized and the other guards flee.
And Tanis like, okay, what the hell now? Who are you? What's going on? These guys are like, they look hood and cloaked, sort of like the Draconians they fought outside Tolis. And he's like, God, dude, did we leave one danger to get into another one? Unmask yourselves. But one of the hooded men turns to Sturm, his hand raised in the air, and he goes, Othsara Neparan, he says. And Sturm's like, I beg your pardon? Gasp. And he's like, Ethsarthai at Parnath. And he's like, oh, they're Knights of Solamnia. And I'm pretty sure Tanis was like, you could have told him that they're like mutant half Kenders or something, and he would not have been more surprised than to find out that they're random knights down here.
They know Sturm's name. They know, because they say, there's no time for an explanation, Sturm Brightblade. The guards will return soon. Come with us.
Yeah.
And then Flint's like, wait a second, not so fast. You'll find time if you want to deal with us. And they're like, let's go. Oh, no. That's right. Flint resists. And then he's taunted by Taz, who is with the knights.
Oh, yeah, dude, I love this. Not so fast, Flint growled, his feet planted firmly in the street, his hands breaking off the handle of a hauberk so that it suited his short stature.
Did he just break a shirt in half? Did he break a shirt in
He
half
definitely
so he
just
could?
broke the shirt in
This shirt was too big.
You'll find time for explanations, or I'm not going. How do you know the knight's name, and how'd you come to be just waiting for us? Oh, just run him through, sang a shrill voice out of the shadows. Leave his body to feed the crows. Not they'll bother. There's few in the world who can stomach dwarf. Satisfied, Tanis turned to Flint, who was red-faced with rage. Someday, vowed the dwarf, I will kill that Kender. But yeah, that hauberk, man, that line has haunted Margaret and Tracy for 30, almost 40 years now. Because it's like they use a halberd, not a hauberk, man.
So the Knights of Solamnia and Taz lead them through dark alleys to enter the old city. And if you remember from descriptions, the old city of like all the palaces and marbles and the libraries, that was all left to ruin, and everyone moved out into the suburbs and kind of built the new city post-cataclysm around the ruins of the old city. So it's abandoned, and that's where they go. And it seems that there's no one there in the old city.
Yeah.
Ruins are abandoned. Tanis, it's in the book, it says it reminds him of what Zaxxaroth was like.
Yes. And he's like, he saw that Tarsus the Beautiful must have deserved its name before the cataclysm. Now nothing but huge blocks of granite lay tumbled about. Vast courtyards were choked and overgrown with weeds turned brown by the biting winter winds. Time comes for us all, basically. But yeah, the city of Tarsus gets smashed in the cataclysm, among other things. All the people are kind of like living out in the outskirts. I don't know why in the like 300 years or so since they haven't bothered to fix it, but I think they were just like, we're not going to go there. It's haunted and evil.
Maybe they think it's like cursed or haunted, right? Like,
exactly.
Oh, the gods must have destroyed all of us for a reason. Let's not go there, or maybe they'll destroy us.
Yeah, and when you're in fantasy land, in D&D land, the place being cursed and haunted is a very real possibility. Why would you want to mess with that?
Tanis meets Ohana because Gilthanas has been talking to her. It's very awkward because Tanis feels this urge to explain his parentage.
Oh, I love this. It's like Gilthanas like, Tanis lived among the Qualinesti for many years. He's the son of my uncle's wife. What an asshole, man. Gilthanas is just such a jerk. Like, think about this.
Like, you don't have to rub it in. It explains here. It says, Ohana drew back the veil from her face and regarded Tanis coldly. Son of my uncle's wife was a polite way of saying Tanis was illegitimate. Otherwise, Gilthanas would have introduced him as the son of my uncle. The half-elf flushed. The old pain returned forcibly, hurting as much now as it had 50 years before. He wondered if he would ever be free of it. Scratching his beard, he said harshly, my mother was raped by human warriors during years of darkness following the cataclysm. The speaker kindly took me in, following her death, and raised me as his own. Ohana's dark eyes grew darker until they were pools of night. She raised her eyebrows. Do you see a need to apologize for your heritage? She asked in a chill voice. Man,
these people are just shredding him, man.
And he's like, no, I then do not, she said, and she turned away from him to Gilthanas. You asked why I came to Man, she just totally dismissed him. She's like, why are you ashamed? You had no control over it. I don't care.
Yeah, like, who cares? Literally doesn't matter.
And then she's like, I don't have time for someone who's so hung up on themselves. Back to Gilthanas.
Like, congratulations, you're alive. Who cares? Moving on. And he's like, but this is the central tragedy of my life. And she's like, bro, get over yourself.
We all have central tragedies of our life.
She's like, look, my job is to keep my people alive. Cry to someone else.
And so we learn that why she's here, she needs help finding her father. And there's like a huge deal because we find out that just like the Qualinasti, the Silvanesti elves have abandoned their home because of the dragon armies. They went to southern Urgoth, and I don't know where that is.
Urgoth is the big island south and north that are off to the west of Abyssinia, west of Qualinesti.
So wouldn't the Silvanesti elves have to have passed through Qualinesti to get there?
We are not told how they got there, but yes, they would have had to. Like when you look at the map, it does not make any sense how they got from Silvanesti to Qualinesti. Silvanesti through the Plains of Dust, through Qualinesti to southern Urgoth, but they would have had to have taken a boat. But there's no real boat passage that'll do that because you have to go through like the glaciers, I guess, underneath just a very complicated and kind of weird, doesn't really make sense. But somehow or another, they end up on the other side of the world.
The Sylvanesti went to southern Urgoth, and her dad stayed to fight. It was Ohana who led the elves away, and she's returned to find her father.
Yeah, but that explains why she's back here in Tarsus.
Yes.
Because Tarsus is like halfway between Urgoth and Sylvanest.
She was trying to hire mercenaries, just like the Lord Tarsus said. And that's when she butted heads with him, because instead of just like going in town and being disguised and try to hire some people, she went actually as like an official delegation and said, I'm here on behalf of so-and-so and I want this. And he said, get out of here.
And Tanis is like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. He's like, you know how they feel about elves even before the Draconians. You're damn lucky they only ordered you tossed out of the city. Alana is like, homie, I did what protocol demands. To be otherwise would have come as a barbarian. When the Lord refused to aid me, I told him I intended to seek help on my own, and to do less would have not been honorable. And he's just like, no. She's like, dude, I am the princess of this people. I have to do things by the rules. Get off.
This is great. Flint, who had been able to follow only bits and pieces of the conversation in Elvis, nudged Tanis. She and the knight will get along perfectly, he snorted, unless their honor gets them killed first.
Pretty much. And yeah, of course, Flint speaks Elven. He went and spent a lot of time in Qualanos and hung out and learned how to... All these people can speak all these languages. It's just kind of like...
They're all polyglots.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in the area. It's like trade. When you're an iterant artist and trader, you learn the languages of the people around you. I always thought that was fun. I always hated Common. It's just such a damn cop-out. But I like, though, that like the Solamnics, when they're meeting with Sturm and friends, they are obviously speaking heavily accented Common. And that's like weird to think about. When you think like, oh, what the hell is heavily accented Common? Well, yeah, okay, their primary language is Solamnic. They don't speak Common regularly, so they speak with an accent. But when you think about where Common came from, Common is a combination of Istaran and Solamnic that went out and became the trade language, and then became this kind of like patois as it spread through the world. And it's not that they're speaking heavily accent. If anything, their Common is like the pure Common. And the people who are in Abenissinia are speaking this weird Common that's been blended with Elven and Dwarven. And it's just like, look, it's like if British people come to America and we're like, oh man, that guy's got a thick accent. And that dude's like, I'm speaking the actual language. You guys have a weird accent. And it's like, okay, fair. Sorry, that's like one of my like decades old pet peeves.
Sturm comes back and he introduces the knights. He says they found the old library that was mentioned before. It was one of the things that maybe Raistlin wanted to find. And they were sent by the knights to this library because it was said to have knowledge of dragons. And the three knights are introduced, and we learn here the ranks of the knights as well.
Mm-hmm. From lowest class to highest, you've got Aaron Talbot, the Knight of the Crown, Brian Donner, Knight of the Sword, and then Derek Crownguard, who's Knight of the Rose. There's a fantastic... The book that Margaret wrote, which was called Dragons of... So yeah, there's a lovely book called The Dragons of the High Lord Skies, which was the second book of the Dragonlance Lost Chronicles that Margaret and Tracy wrote like 20, 30 years after these books came out, where they fill in some of the stories that were missing from the original Chronicles. And that is probably my all-time favorite novel written by Margaret and Tracy. It is like, certainly in my opinion, it's honestly the best one they wrote. And it's this phenomenal story that explains like kind of the Solamnics and their search for faith. And it talks about these three dudes and how deeply challenged they are by what they have to deal with in terms of discovering the truth of where they come from, what their heritage is, what the dragons are like and all this. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful story. I hope someday we get to actually have that conversation because I love those books. But these three dudes are going to be real important.
And they explain why they're here. They found a book with pictures of dragons in it in an unknown language, and they were copying it, and then they were going to return to Sandcrest. I don't know where Sandcrest is, but I do know...
Yeah, well, hang on a second, though. Because one of the parts that's really fun is that Sturm introduces the knights, and then he turns to them, and he's like, this is Tanis Half-Elven, our leader. And then Ohana starts and looks at him again, and she's like, I beg your pardon?
Man, he's the leader. Well, I had a question, because where is Sandcrest? Because I thought all the Solamnic Knights were from Palanthas.
Yeah, so the Solamnic Knights are mainly from Solamnia, which is a big country in the north of Krynn. But Sancrist is the island that is to the farthest west. It is the island where the gnomes live. Mount Nevermind is the northern part of Sancrist, and the southern part of Sancrist is a Solamnic colony, as it were. The main capital there is Castle Uthwiston, which is where Gunther, the head of the knights, lives. It's also where the Whitestone is and other things like that. Basically, what we're given to know is that Urgoth used to be an empire, and it was an empire of humans before the Cataclysm fell. And then it became like an ogre empire now. Solamnia is still a human country, but they kind of had outposts all the way over on the other side of the Urgothian Empire. And after the Cataclysm, they kind of kept that because of security reasons and other things like that.
Got it.
So Sancrist is the island that's far to the west.
All right. Then they met Taz. They're the ones who kidnapped him, and they found out that he can read the language in the book. And Flint says, absolutely not. He must be lying to you. Taz can barely read Common. And here we learn that Taz happened to pick up some glasses when he was staying in Thorbarden. Glasses of true seeing.
Yeah. He puts them on and he's been able to read the book. It says, I can imagine what it says, Tannis snapped. Stories about automatons and magic rings of teleportation and plants that live off air. Where is he? I'm going to have a little talk with Tasselhoff Burfoot. Automatons and plants and the magic rings of teleporting are from the first ever Dragonlance story about Tasselhoff, where he puts on a magic ring and gets taken to meet Demogorgon. And it was written by Roger Moore and published in Dragon Magazine before the Chronicles actually came out. And so that was like the world's first intro to Dragonlance, and this is kind of a throwback to that.
So Tannis confronts Taz about the glasses. We learn he stole them from a dwarf, and he learned they were magic when he left them on a map, and he could read what it was when it was unintelligible to him.
Yeah, I thought that was super hot. I would kill for those glasses.
And he said, well, I told Raistlin about him, and Raistlin confirmed that they were magical, because they were like, well, maybe it's not magic, maybe it's technical. And we also learned that the glasses make someone see things too truly. That was like what Raistlin hinted at darkly, is that you could see things too truly. I'm guessing that will have an effect or something later on. And here's where we learn about the various colors of dragons, chromatic colors of dragons, as well as dragon orbs. And we learn that the orbs would allow their user to control the dragons. Somehow Tannis knows about these dragon orbs, and he says that they're all lost. And he says, well, yeah, but the book says where they could be located. And right as he's about to get into it, we heard the sound of bellowing horns and the approach of the draconian armies and dragons. That's how the chapter ends.
Now, before we head out, though, there are some cool things here. Like, first off, I thought it was a little cheeky that Tracy would take his version of the Library of Alexandria and turn it into the Library of Christian. Like, is it really? 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 Okay, Tracy. But then, I'm sorry, Kristan.
It's Kristan.
Yeah. I love that when Taz is explaining why Raistlin said that they were magical, he's like, oh, the dwarven magic users of old, first off, dwarven magic users, which is a thing that we know is not allowed in Dragonlance because dwarves are actually a gray gem race and they cannot use magic. However, there have been later reanalysis of canon and depending on blah, blah, blah. Anyways, dwarven magic users, or really dwarven artificers, but I guess they didn't have artificers in first edition. The dwarven artificers of old made them to read books written in other languages and Tannis pursued magic spell books. Taz's voice was a whisper. And what else did Raistlin say? That if I touched his spell books or even looked at them sideways, he'd turn me into a cricket and swallow me whole. I love that line because I love that image of Race just grabbing Taz, staring him directly in the face and saying, I will eat you.
He looked up at Tannis with wide eyes. I believed him too.
Oh my God. But yeah, so here we go. The dragons, learning all about the chromatic dragons, the evil dragons. It's important that he only learns about the chromatic dragons, though.
And it says blue dragons, red dragons, black dragons, and green dragons. And that's all of them, right? They're for now.
As always, they all forget the white dragons. But yeah, the dragon orb, man, dragon orbs are sick. I spent a lot of time with Margaret going into what the dragon orbs are, what they do, how they go places and stuff like that for the newest Dragonlance novels. But we will talk about them more as we go because they're going to be very important in this series. And honestly, they're one of my favorite magic items in Dragonlance. They're just really, really rad.
They remind me of those orbs in the Lord of the Rings, the ones that, what are they called? The Palanthars or
Yeah, the Palantir.
Palantir. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. And it just generically, it's a wizard magic orbs. Come on.
You got to control the orb.
Yeah. Well, he's got to just sit there and ponder his orbs. But the thing about the dragon orbs I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We'll find out more about the dragon orbs as we go next.
Very soon, we're going to learn about what the dragon orbs can do. It's wow.
Yeah.
The last line here is, now he could hear in the distance the sound of hundreds of horns braying. Horns all of them had heard before. The bellowing brass horns that heralded the approach of the draconian armies and the approach of the dragons. The horns of death. That's how it ends. We'll start chapter 7 next time, which is not destined to meet again in this world. And that's in quotes, right? We're quoting again a line from Raistlin.
Yeah. And with that, my friends, we are going to call this episode a day. Once again, this has been Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. I've been Shivam. He's been John. You can find us on the Twitters at various places and also at our Patreon, which is, what's the Patreon address again, John?
Our Patreon can be found at www.patreon.com/Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. All one word.
Give a quick shout out to two of our patrons, Alexander Louis and Nicholas Campo, and apologies if I say their names wrong, but thank you so much for pledging at the $5 level. That's one of the benefits, is we will shout you out here in the podcast.
By supporting us at our Patreon, you can help us continue to bring this show to you, and maybe even someday more than one episode a month, though really, I wouldn't hold my breath. These episodes take a long time to put together because there's a lot of reading to do. But with that, my friends, we'll see you next time.
Good night. Forge and Taz.
Flint, Fire, Forge.
Yeah. I have Forge in my notes. I need to fix that. But so